This is Sarah with Posh Pooch Designs, and every Tuesday at 9:30 Mountain Time, a.m., we try to have a live video chat, and we discuss yarns and crochet questions. And today I've got my little Maximo with me. I wanted to give you all an update. Little Maximo decided to go for a walk on our property. We have about 5 acres. And we love to walk around the property. And my son has a Jeep racing team called Olympus Off-Road. And they had a truck over there, and Maximo went underneath that truck. And this little guy loves to lick weird things. He'll lick dirt. He'll lick just oils and things. So we really have to watch him. And he did something similar to this a couple of years ago. Good morning, Stacy. Clink in. Oh, I turned my cut backwards. There we go. Clink in. Anyway, this little guy, while we were out on our walk, decided to lick some transmission fluid. Well, of course, we freaked out and got him some help and everything. And he had lots, he was throwing up a lot. I don't want to be too descriptive, but he was throwing up black and gravel of some sort, and we thought that it was blood. But he had a rough night. They got his tummy all cleaned out, and he shook a lot, and he slept with me. Now you can see in his eyes he's just not 100% yet, but he is doing a lot better today. And poor guy, he has to go in tomorrow for his shots, and it just happens to be right at the same time. So anyway, he's doing a lot better. He's not 100% yet. You know, and so I just wanted y'all to know he's doing better. Don't worry, he's going to get better. We're going to make sure he does good and gets better. Something that I learned, good morning, Victoria. Good morning, Petra. Something that I learned about dogs when Rosie was having some tummy trouble is that one of the best things, if they're not eating, to give them is canned pumpkin or fresh pumpkin if you have fresh minced pumpkin. It is really, really good for their tummies. And yesterday, that was about the only thing that he could keep down. He did eat a cookie this morning, and he did eat his breakfast, so he's doing a lot better. And so I just wanted to give you all a little report on this ornery little guy. Love my babies. All right, so I'm going to set him here. He's going to want to sit behind me. He's got his hand in my shirt. All right, sit right here behind Mama. All right, so that's the update on Maximo. Keep praying for him and thinking about it and sending him good thoughts because he needs them. Maximo, in case you're wondering, somebody asked me this yesterday. He's 9 years old. I've had him for 8 years, almost 8.5. He is a rescue dog that we got when we were in Oklahoma. My sister Gina helped me find him. And he's ornery. And he's a mess sometimes and gets into stuff, but I just love him, and he loves to model my stuff, so. Yes, warm pumpkin biscuits. Those are excellent. One thing that I do when I make the dogs cookies now is instead of using wheat flour, I use coconut flour, and you can also use almond flour. It's just a little better on their stomachs. You know, and I'll just make up a big batch. I used to use all my cookie cutters and make neat little shapes. They don't care. I use my little round one, just make little round circles. Anyway, pumpkin is one of the best. So if you have your coffee today, clink in. I took my markers and my Sharpies, and I made me a new cup, and I baked it so it'd stay on there. Because remember, I lost my Posh Pooch Design cup. I'm just beside myself. I cannot find it anywhere. It'll show up one of these days. And I have cleaned my yarn room. Someone asked me the other day, well, have you cleaned your yarn room? Yes, I have. So anyway, yes. All right. Well, we have so many things to talk about today. And one of the questions that I get often, actually, is yarn weights and substitutions. The yarn calls for a 4. Can I use a 5? And so I made a chart. I'm going to see if you can see this. I made a chart, and these are all the yarn weights. And it starts from 0 and goes to 7. And is this upside down? Is that better? I'm just trying to keep you on your toes. Starts with 0 and goes to 7. The thing about the 7 is it didn't used to go that high. And because a lot of the yarn companies have come up with this big chunky stuff. Hey, mine has a fuzzball in it. There we go. They come up with the big chunky stuff. They had to make a brand new category. And so I went through my yarns, and I have one for every category. So here is the 0, the lace weight. And then this one is the number 1. I call this what you make doilies and tablecloths out of. I've got just a tiny, tiny bit of the number 2, which a lot of times is a baby yarn. Okay, then this is a number 3. And this is the Downton Abbey yarn. I had big plans to make something beautiful with this purple. It hasn't happened yet. And then you have your worsted weight number 4s. And cottons and worsted weight are usually number 4s. Sometimes you can get cotton in lower weights also. So, but I'm talking about your basic everyday yarn that's used the most is your number 4. This one is from Hobby Lobby. But your Red Heart Super Saver, your Red Heart Love, a lot of those are number 4s. Your peaches and cream and sugar and cream, I think those are all number 4s as well. And that's your everyday yarn. Then you have some little bit thicker ones. And I've got a Charisma here from, that's I think it's loops and threads. That's Michael's. And that's a number 5. So it's a little bit chunkier than the number 4. And then I have this one, which is a number 6. And that's a Lion, this is a Lion brand. Thick and Quick. This is one of my favorite yarns to work with, this brand, because it's big and thick and soft, but it's not heavy. So, and that's your number 6. And that's as high as it used to go. And then, of course, all those companies came out with these great big ones, and so they're called jumbos, and they're number 7. The thing about the yarn weights is that there's wiggle room between each one. For instance, the number 4 and the chunky, a lot of times you can't tell the difference, or it'll be thinner, and there's a little bit of wiggle room between all of those weights. Even in your threads, sometimes it's really hard to tell the difference. You're looking at it and you're like, it doesn't look any different, but it really does. And there's lots of play, and you'll find yarns that'll be like thick and thins. Thin portions of it will be, like a 2, and then the thick portion will be like a 4 or a 5. And so those are a little bit more difficult, and those are creative and what I call artsy-fartsy yarns, and I love them. They'll put sequins and all different things that might affect those weights. But when you get a pattern and it says, number 4 yarn or number 5 yarn, always remember that that's the pattern that the designer used, and she's suggesting, or he is suggesting, that you use that size. But you don't have to, and that's why you need to make a gauge swatch, or if it's in rows, a lot of times I'll do a row and measure and see if it comes out to what it's supposed to be. Again, your tape measure is one of your most important tools in your crochet tool bag. I say that all the time, and that's because when I first started learning to crochet, many years ago, when I was 15 or 16, I learned from a book, and the book that I had, I wish I could find that book. I really do. I can't even remember the author, but she talked about measuring as you go, and it has stuck in my mind, and I always do that. Okay, so we have all these different weights of yarn. What happens if the pattern calls for a 5 and I've only got 3s and 4s? Well, you can double your yarns. For instance, if you use 2 strands of worsted weight number 4, you can substitute that for a 6. And a lot of times, again, you're going to need to make it a little bit of it, like a row or a square or something, and measure as you go. Measure, measure, measure. It sounds like Marsha, Marsha, Marsha. Measure, measure, measure. Maybe that'll help you remember. Because, I don't remember things all the time. My granddaughter's always having to remind me of stuff. Okay, another way of substituting yarn is, say, I made a hat out of this Wool Ease Thick and Quick. I love the hat. It fits great, but I can't find any more of this particular yarn. What do I do? Well, the best thing to do is, say a yarn's discontinued, and you want that same weight. Well, make sure you look for the weight on the yarn. All yarns will have them. Go and look and see what other yarns there are. Just about every yarn, I'm going to say big box manufacturer, Michaels, Hobby Lobby, Red Heart, Lion Brand, they all have weights on their yarns. Sometimes they're a little harder to find than others, but almost always you'll find that little box, like here, like I showed you. It'll have that little box, and you can go and find a yarn that is the same weight as what you're working. And this is your key to getting it right. Because if you don't go by this and you just go by feel or you just go by look, you might not, and the truth is you might not get it perfectly right anyway if you're switching yarns. Another thing to remember is everybody does crochet differently. Remember, I'm always saying that I am a loose hooker and my daughter is a tight hooker. We all crochet differently, and so I may get the results I want with this yarn, but you may not. And so when you're reading a pattern and it says use crochet hook, let's say I, and they want you to use a number 5, and you're thinking, that doesn't even sound right. Sometimes it's because they want a more open or tighter look on their pattern. And so it's a good idea to try to match that yarn and that crochet hook. But you may not crochet as tightly or as loosely as that pattern designer. And so you got to work with it a little bit. I do get questions all the time. I worked your pattern, it's wider than you say it is. Or I worked your pattern and it's shorter than you say it is. Or it didn't fit me the way yours fit you. Well, first of all, I'm a 5'2" size woman. And if you're a 6'7", 110 pounds, it's not going to fit the same. And so that's where measuring comes in. But also, everybody's technique is different. And everybody holds their hook different. Everybody stitches loose or tight. And so it's up to you to make your item the way you want it. If you only go by the exact stitch counts or the exact measurements of a pattern, it may not work the same. And so you've got to put your creative juice hat on and work it a little bit. I tend to be more of the, like I said before, the artsy-fartsy kind of crocheter and knitter and crafter. And some people heavily rely on stitch counts. And I know they are important. And I think all patterns should have them. And some of I've been doing this for about 10 years. And some of my patterns at the very beginning, I didn't even think to put stitch counts on because I measure everything. And as I've grown in my pattern designing, I've gone back, updated those patterns, and some of them needed updating terribly bad. Hey, I'm not perfect, and I'm not the best, number one pattern designer in the world. I love what I do, and I love that I get to do it. And, even my testers make mistakes because we're just people. We're humans. And so some of those old patterns, I've kind of contacted some of the people. I'm like, what were we thinking? And she's like, it still works. And it does, but I've added extra information and stitch counts. And because I don't heavily rely on those stitch counts, I rely on measuring. So back to the yarn. We have 7 categories. And if you're wanting, like for instance, this jumbo yarn, it is huge and it is fun. And I have a project in mind for this. I just haven't got it done yet. So, but what if I only have number 7 or number 6s? I can double or triple the working with several strands at once in order to get the thicker yarn if I want to. You may be looking for a certain color and they only have it in the lighter weight. And so you can double strand. Just watch what you're doing. Check your gauge. The biggest mistake that people make, in my opinion, is they get the exact yarn that the designer calls for. They use the exact hook. And then they rearrange the whole pattern. And they're like, but it didn't work. Or they don't get the exact hook, and they don't get the exact yarn, and they don't go by the pattern, and then they get upset because it doesn't work. the whole purpose of having at the top of the pattern the yarn and the hook is because they want you to do it. I want people to work my patterns. I want them to be easy. I want them to be easy to work. And I work really hard at explaining and trying to get pictures in there. And I know I don't think like everybody else. And you don't think like me a lot of times. And so sometimes I may say something in a pattern that can be confusing. That's why I always tell people, go ahead and contact me. And another question I wanted to address today, I had someone contact me and they said they couldn't find where to contact me by. Okay, so I'm going to give you the easiest way to contact me. On every picture, just about, that I have posted on the internet, unless someone stole it and took it off, I have a mark. And on that mark, it says www.poshpoochdesigns.com. Super easy to remember. And if you can't remember it, you can Google it. I have a web page. And my web page is basically just, I call it a landing page. I don't really do any sales through there other than show you what you can click on to find all the different places. It has a picture for YouTube. It has a picture for Ravelry. It has a picture for Craftsy, for Etsy. But up in the corner on the right, I believe it's on the, I think it's the right side, it has a picture of me and my dogs in front of my computer, and it says, contact me. All you have to do is go to my web page and then click that picture that says contact me. It takes you right to my email. And then you can ask any question that you have. Sometimes I get, when people ask me a question on Etsy, I'm thinking they're talking about my Etsy shop. And sometimes they'll contact me through Etsy because they see that I have Etsy. And they're asking something else, and it just confuses me. Because I'm not thinking like they're thinking, and they're not thinking like I'm thinking. So, the easiest way to contact me is to go to my webpage, and my webpage address is on every picture because that's my watermark. Just a note. So, back to our yarn. I did it upside down again. Is that not funny? All right, so don't let yourself get confused about yarn. You need to love your yarn, squeeze it, play with it, throw it around the room, and make some beautiful things. Because all these different thicknesses have purposes. And there's neat techniques you can learn for all of them. So, when it comes to substituting, and you want to go by the weight, always look on the yarn for the yarn number weight. All of the yarn companies will have it on there. It'll be that same little symbol and a number. That's what that is. That's the yarn weight. And that has to do with the thickness. Okay, but if you want to substitute for another brand, that works great. Just make sure you get the right weight. And then play with it a little bit so that you know you've done the right way. Don't make the whole project and then say, oh no, it didn't work. Practice a little bit. See if that stitch or that pattern or that square or whatever you're making is going to work. And so that's my key, and that's my thoughts on working with different weights of yarn. Every yarn also has the recommended crochet hook. Now, when I'm writing my patterns, I don't always use the recommended because sometimes I might want it open or tight or something like that. But every yarn also has a little square. Let me get this one because it's big. Let's see. I don't know if you can see that, but it has a little square, and one of them is for crochet and one of them is for knit. And it will give you a recommended size knitting needle or a recommended size crochet hook on every yarn. It's pretty much standard. Now, if you're buying yarn from, say, someone who makes it themselves and dyes it, it may look a little different on the wrapper or whatever, or it might have a tag or something. And if you don't know, remember, you can always ask the manufacturer who made that yarn. For instance, you have a local person who winds, say, alpaca yarn, and you don't know how thick it is, you can ask them. And then another thing, if it's not on there, you can compare it to the yarn that you have. Don't let yourself get frustrated because you don't know what something is. Measure and compare to the yarn that you have, and go from there. Yarn and crochet is fun, and it's artsy, and there's so many things that you can create and do with it. You know, not just crocheting and knitting, but lots of other things too. And it should never, ever be a frustration. If you're working a pattern that's frustrating you, set it aside. Contact the designer. Maybe they can help you. And another key when you're contacting the designer, because I get this all the time, I messed up, can you help me? If you send a picture, just take a quick picture with your phone of what's going on, say if maybe, you know, turning or whatever, and send that to the designer. That helps them answer your question a lot quicker also. Just a note. So that's my thoughts on yarn thicknesses and substitutions. It's not real in-depth, it's just basic, because you're going to find with me, if you've ever watched my videos or my live videos, I don't like things to be complicated. I want them to be easy and fun. I don't ever want to feel frustrated when I'm working with yarn, because I love yarn and I love playing with it. I love going in the store and looking at it down the aisles. It's just fun. All right, so we talked about Maximo. He's doing much better, and we talked about yarn. And let's talk a few things about what is happening this week at Posh Pooch Designs. Something that I did on Friday, get this turned around, is I did a video on how to make stitch markers using polymer clay. There we go. And I did two different kinds. This is just a plain one with a circle, and I used a letterpress. This one I did an oval, I added a charm, and I used a Sharpie to put the letter on. And you know, we talked about how stitch markers are fun and important. And one of the things that I have really started using after cleaning up my yarn room is I take a stitch marker with a letter on it, and that letter is representative of the crochet hook that I used. And then I just hook that on the last stitch that I made. That way, when I go back to it, I can use that same crochet hook and not have to wonder, oh my goodness, what hook did I use with this project? Because when I cleaned my yarn room, I probably found about 25 crochet hooks. Confession, I love crochet hooks as much as yarn, I guess. So anyway, that's a video that I did. It's on YouTube. It's a lot of fun. It's not very long. It's really easy, and I just show you how to make the polymer clay pieces and then how to put them all together. Okay, another thing that I did this week, and I wasn't going to do this, but I had a friend actually say, I'm struggling with your Frisbee dog pattern. And so I call these Frisbee flyers. And they're made with 2 strands of worsted weight yarn. You can make them with cotton if you want. And so I just did a quick video to show her how to do it. And she's like, oh, thank you so much. It helped me so much. She's got a bunch of dogs, and they use these. Now, one of the questions I get about this is yarn bad for dogs. The whole point of the Frisbee flyer isn't to let your dog chew on it, although they do grab it with their teeth. Just watch them, especially little dogs. My dogs, what I do is when you make the Frisbee flyer, it has this little flap inside. So I hide a cookie or a treat in there. And then I kind of close it. And we use these a lot in the house if it's raining or muddy or something. We get a lot of snow up here, so, you know, I don't want the dogs out trampling in the snow, bring it in. And so I'll just throw these down the hall so they can get some exercise. They'll run down, they'll get the cookie and eat it, and then they'll bring it back to me. So that's a fun thing that you can do. Just watch them. Don't let them chew on them like you do a toy. You know, you remember those old big knot toys with strings and stuff? I read some things about how some of the dogs have gotten the strings caught in their throats or in their stomachs. And so we do really need to be careful when we're playing with our dogs using yarn toys. Just a note. The other thing I got done yesterday, and this was one of the hardest videos I have ever done, because it was doggy diapers for female dogs that are in heat or have potty issues. And I actually made these when Rosie, my little red Chihuahua, was having some gland problems, and it was a mess. Oh my goodness, it smelled horrible. And so what you do, let me open this one right here real quick. What you do, you make it like this, and then you take your feminine napkins that are adhesive, and you put it in the back, like that. And if your dog has incontinence issues, you can use a thicker pad if you want to. But it works really great when they're in heat. That way you don't have to use the big thick diapers. You make these out of your leftover worsted weight, and you can use the pad in there, and you don't have to wash it every time. And the reason I chose worsted weight is because you can make them out of cotton. It works just fine. The pattern is just perfect for cotton. But the problem that I found with cotton is absorbent, and it absorbs the smell. And even though you wash it over and over again, that smell I just can't get it out. And I've used bleach and vinegar and everything else in the cotton. And so I went with the worsted weight. If you just use like a Red Heart Super Saver, or like the I Love This yarn from Hobby Lobby, or just your leftover whatever worsted weight you've got, and you use that pad, you can still throw it in the wash. It washes up just fine, but you don't get that smell that sticks with it. It goes away. So that's just a thing. And another thing I have noticed, if once you go to the dryer, if you do smell a little bit, you can lay them out in the sun, and the sun will help absorb some of that smell out. Just a note on doggy diapers. I wasn't going to finish this one because it was just so complicated. It has 3 sizes, because I did the dog belly band, and it came across really well. People have really liked it. But I got a lot of people asking me for this. And I did this pattern a long, long time ago, and I just wanted to update it and rewrite it. So if you looked at the blog and you used that pattern, I'm going to say like from a year ago, it's different now. So make sure you go back and get the updated version off the blog. All right, so one more thing that I have in mind to do is I have a lot of requests for this bag. And this is my kitties in a row, although I call it chihuahuas in a row. Because I have chihuahuas, and they look a lot like chihuahuas. Anyway, I had a lot of people ask me if I would do a video on this bag. This is already a free pattern on my blog. If you want the pattern, just go to Kitty. Did I call it Kitties in a Row bag or something like that? It's on my Ravelry. It's also on my blog. You can find it really easy. Actually, if you go to my blog and if you click on free crochet patterns, I have a whole category, and you can go down and find it under bags and purses. But I'm going to do that one probably next week because I've had a lot of requests for it. It's one that I put in the calendar. I don't know if you all do the crochet a day calendars, and I've submitted quite a few patterns to those, and it's fun. And then I get the calendars for free, and that's in there also if you've purchased that from I think Amazon, or I think you can get them at Michael's and I don't know, a couple of Joann's. So anyway, that is our live video chat for today. And I didn't want to go into real in-depthness about the yarn weights other than to help you understand that the yarn weight is important, and try to get the same thing, but you can substitute colors and weights. You know, if the pattern designer did hers in yellow, you don't have to do it in yellow. You can do it any color you want, and as many colors as you want. It's up to you and your choice. And for instance, say you don't care for it in yellow, but you love the pattern, so you're not going to make it. Oh, don't do that. If you love the pattern, make it in your favorite color, and then it will be beautiful because you used your creativeness and made it pretty. Alrighty, so I'm glad everyone was here today. I didn't get a chance to say hello to everyone. Turn my cup this way. Everybody clink in. And that's our video for today. And I'll see you next week. Have a wonderful week. Bye-bye now.